Hello and welcome to Drawing Blood, inside look on our game #Blood, which is love letter to Zelda and Cartoon Network and the late 2000s, no, early 2000s, late 90s. There we go. I'm your host Chris Burns. With me as always is Bob Fox, and also abroad we got our writer Greg Lane, Andrew Tavis, one of our programmers. Is it too loud? Turn it down. I'm just turning down the music. How do you do that? 60. Sorry about that, guys. Tech issues. Let me know if that's too loud or too soft. Yes, so we got Greg Lane abroad, who's our writer, Andrew Tavis, one of our programmers, and Cody Greenhouse, the other programmer. There's a team of 5 here. And in this series, I kind of take you through what we do to get some of the sprite work or cinematics or anything dealing with animation done. Here. So I'm just gonna kind of continue where we left off last week, and I figure this character, this enemy we're gonna be working on today, will sort of just be our stream for a while until we get this sprite work done. He's an important character, but he's not dire to get in the game right away, so I figure I'll take you through how we get through the whole sprite sheet. And we started last week, so I'm just gonna play what I got so far. And I'll show you what we did last week, and then go into what we...
Got a lot of people from last week again.
Oh, good. So you guys remember. That's good. I'm glad. Thanks for tuning in, too. That's always nice to see repeat customers. Okay. So on the top row here, you see these 3 piles of dirt and this kind of guy popping out of the dirt. They're all the same character, all registered, all different sprites that we kind of link together to get a full animation or full experience here. So I'm going to just play those for a little bit. Got a lot going on here. So let me turn off the 2 that I started this morning, actually. Because this is what we did last week. We got this dirt pile that's just an idle. Kind of like, I call these the antic or transitional animations to go from idle to moving. So you can see here, it like opens this little portal, which cuts to this one. Be this little kind of dirt pile moving around, kind of like that Bugs Bunny cartoon theory. And if Becky gets too close or doesn't attack at the correct time, we got this one where he pops out and hit Control-Shift-W, grabs her, gets her back in. I don't have her embedded in this animation. That'll take another one where if he actually gets to attack you and actually hits you, Becky will be embedded inside the sprite. You'll lose control of Becky, obviously, and he'll take her down into the dirt, and then we'll have to have her reappear, which will be a whole nother sort of sprite work embedded for Becky's sprites here. So the idea with our game is, you know, we got a bit of a beat 'em up kind of style, very Zelda-ish too, so kind of a hybrid between Battletoads and Zelda. And to kind of spice it up, we have a bunch of villains, and a lot of it's just hack and slash your way to get them killed. And then others, we want to kind of spice it up by changing the way you would approach combat. This one, we decided it would be nice since we have like this shovel tool, which you could be used to find treasures in the game and all that stuff. But we thought we'd use that tool to actually expose this guy, get him into a prone position, and hurt him that way. So there's no way you could just swipe your field hockey stick and hit this dirt pile without kind of changing tools and getting this out. So that's what I started working on this morning. I'm going to turn off this. If you pay attention to this area, where my mouse is, where Becky's digging, you'll see something happening. So this is still laid out. It's not fully animated. That's why it gets that little bit of a floaty feeling. But the idea is if you pull out your shovel, get close enough to any of these 3 animations, hit it at the right time before this guy can attack, you will unearth him. And that's when you can kind of go to town and try to kill him with your field hockey stick. So what goes into that? So there's a few things you have to kind of think about when making these kind of animations. Mostly as I start animating, it's like, what would the player, like, what's my intentions with the player, what the player would do. My thought is, you dig him up and then instantly swing and kill him. That's sort of what the theory is behind this. So how do I set this up when the player chooses to do something else? Say you unearth him, then run away because something else is attacking you. Perfectly suitable for this kind of game. So we have to set it up in a bunch of different ways. So initially we'll get to this sprite right here, where this is just getting to the prone position. So you dig him up, and you can see here there's some puppeting going on up here. I got my chart on the top here. This is every frame. And it goes in conjunction with her the digging, the shovel animation rather. So I want to kind of follow this timing. That's why when it pops up, you can kind of see it goes together. So she grabs it, settles, pulls them out, and that way it kind of feels like everything's on one kind of layer and one kind of rhythm. So I make sure the timing's pretty accurate when it comes to that thing. Once he's in the air, she's doing her own thing, so that doesn't really need to follow anything else. So it's just about timing at that point. So I made sure that was happening in the beginning. Pulls out, lands, settles. From this one, we're going to take this last frame, right? His head and his torso. And then I go into what I call a prone or an idle position. This is when he's vulnerable. This is when Becky can hit him. And this is when he can't hurt Becky. And then I'll kind of do an animation with that. And it'll be a kind of a standard ease in, ease out. And anyone who's familiar with this series at all, they'll notice I do the same timing for almost every idle. It just kind of gives everything a little bit of a life and a little bit of a rhythm. Did I miss any comments here? I see you. But I have a hard time getting into the injury. What do you suggest what I can do for it? With inexperienced animation, I'm talking to Manzu here. Is that the animation industry or the gaming industry? Because they're kind of different. If you want to answer back. Yeah, you should be. Yeah, it's been 3 years. Animated T dot. Hi, I love Coin. Oh man, that's one of the old ones. That was when we first became a studio. Coin. It was one of an animation we did a while back that was kind of inspired by Double Dragon. Okay, so I'm gonna jump right into this one. Well, let me show you what I've been working with here. I'm gonna turn off all this, so I just have these two isolated sprites. When I right-click and edit, I lose some of the top of the animation. It just doesn't work in the work area. And I keep the horizon right here in the middle because that's exactly where Becky, our protagonist, that's where her feet kind of stay. You can see right here, this is the anchor point, this little cross mark. I kind of keep her feet and the shadow there, so I kind of register all the sprites in a certain way. Now Becky's this really tiny character in the game, and these guys are quite large, so it's gonna kind of mess up when you right click and edit. So I'm gonna have to double click on this one to get the right size. I clean up everything at 400%. So I'm gonna make sure I zoom in and zoom out on that level and kind of show you how I set this one up. Got the dirt pile, pops out. This is all fully animated. And then I isolated the head to keep the same exact timing. So I'm going to just finish the timing of this. You can see I have the keyframes up here. The top layer is what I need to do in terms of timing. So I'm just going to blank keyframe that. And then the head will be finished, and I'll start on that. All right. So when you throw this guy in the air, anyone who does like that kind of animation where you throw something in the air, a bouncing ball kind of, that's what animators sort of kind of go on. When you think of something gets thrown in the air, there's levels of speed. And obviously when it gets up to the top point, it stalls, then falls down, it gathers up speed until it hits. So that's what we're kind of establishing the timing of this head too. So we got his head kind of whipping up. It's going to kind of float there for a second, then kind of come crashing down. Now you'll see here that like the in-betweens start to not make sense, right? We got this guy from here, and this is the next keyframe. That's when he lands, right? Now, uh, sometimes when you get into these flash kind of things, the instinct is let me just in between it to that timing. So like I would make sure the jaw like starts lining up with his jaw there and create the arc and all that stuff. This is different though because he's falling from up top here, so I kind of want a smear frame at this one. So I wouldn't in between that necessarily the same exact way as I would if it was just sort of a subtle head turn. So I'm know inside the head symbol here that this is going to be a smear. Then we can in between these last two frames just to get from there here to there and make sure the last frame kind of smears into this impact frame right there. So it's a big ease out. So I'm going to go closest to the keyframes here, the one that's the closest to the smear, because you want the smear to be the last frames and you don't want to like ease into it, else it'll just kind of look wonky. So I'm going to do that. We got the eyes kind of going back and forth there. You can see sort of by the eyes that that's establishing the speed here too. Alright, let's see if I even need to rough this one out. And it doesn't look like I do. I don't recommend that for most projects, but these characters I'm pretty familiar with right now, as we drew hundreds of thousands of these drawings already, so I could go right in and start cleaning this guy up. I'm going to go to 400, as I said before, brush 8, pressure sensitivity on. That gives me a nice kind of thick line, have a lot of control with. I don't have to press hard. It's not gonna be hard on my fingers or anything like that. And I usually start with the eyes, is what I'm going to do now. And this is just a kind of a standard in between, now that I kind of did the ease out before that. You can see I just follow the arcs here, but just let me know if there's any questions or anything like that. Sorry, my comment section's over here, so if there's any questions I'm ignoring, please forgive me, and we'll get to them as best we can throughout the series. Alright. I have kind of like this grass sprout as an indication for hair, and when I do all these characters, I love having that secondary thing. So I'll always have even like the bald characters that we've animated here, like the NPC characters that are bald. I'll usually keep like 2 or 3 like strings of hair just to get that secondary motion. Hair is perfect for that with all animation. And it really adds a lot. It's not everything can be even and kind of look robotic. And it's those little characteristics like that that really kind of push it into a realm that it's like, oh, this feels like a cartoon, you know? It's like how an animator would approach a game. And that's sort of our theory with the whole game in general. We want to make this game feel like a cartoon experience, and that's in terms of writing and the narrative, the gameplay, and of course the cinematics are just cartoons, so that's an easy sell. Alright, so I got that. You see there, you kind of can see the squash and stretch, and you can see right there it pops, so it doesn't look like inside the symbol, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So when you're first starting out and doing stuff like this, you're going to have to go back and forth a lot, and it's like, is this the right arc, and all that kind of stuff.
When's the game coming out?
Once we have an official date, we're gonna release that. We're under obligation not to tell anyone until we kind of have our bearings and stuff, though. But trust me, once we know the date, we're gonna blast out all the emails, and we'll might even have our Discord open at that time and stuff. So we'll have a lot of information on that. But keep staying tuned on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and all that stuff. And yeah, once we know, we'll let everyone know, or once we're legally allowed to tell everyone.
Oh, we don't even.
But we don't have it. There's no official date yet. We know sometime in 2024. That's not an answer a lot of people love, but we want as much time as we can to finish it too. So it's been a long journey, You know, if we went back to our first files to in Flash to see what like our first sprites were. You know, there's we name our files. Well, we try to. I'm not very good at it, but we try to name our files by date. So you see a lot of like, you know, September 2018 kind of stuff. It's been a really long time, but we haven't really worked full time on it until the last 2 years, and that was our exclusive job. The last 2 years was working on this game, or a year and a half, I should say. All right, so I'm just following the arcs here. And these action scenes, it's like I wouldn't get bogged down with like the in-betweens being exactly perfect. And there's a lot of things going in your way when you work at this kind of zoom in level. One, you're never gonna see this guy at 400% and this close up. We're very conscientious of like line weight, meaning the thickness of the line. So, ideally, what we see the character at is 25%. You see here. So we make him at 400%. We blow him down to a quarter of the percent, and that should be what it looks like on the screen in terms of line weight. So, if I'm sitting there and scrutinizing these really kind of weird in betweens and stuff, I would be here forever. We wouldn't get as many drawings in, and frankly, it would lessen the experience of this fully animated experience, immersive kind of thing we're trying to go for. So I don't spend a whole lot of time looking back and trying to correct any of that kind of stuff. I try to do it at a reasonable pace to get my quota of drawings done. And we set out to have a quota of drawings done. Like, we knew we'd have thousands of drawings in this game. We figured the benchmark was going to be around 50,000 drawings for the sprite work. I knew how much time we had to do it, like our deadlines and all that stuff. And then I just did some reverse math, and I have to do, if I'm working 5 days a week, about 115 drawings a day to hit that. Now, that was all well and good in the beginning, but now we have over 100,000 drawings in it. So, you know, we exceeded that, and we still have a lot more content to make, so I should have done some math about what we were going to have to make, honestly, before I just made an arbitrary number. And there'll be days I do less, and there'll be days I do more. And the more complicated the character, obviously, the less drawings I do. And there's some huge characters in this game. Huge in time, in terms of, like, how much labor that goes into them. But, yeah, we're sitting pretty at about... What was the frame count, Bob? We're over 120 for sure, and that was a couple weeks ago. And there's something in the programming engine that kind of gives you a list of how many of each drawing. Now, when I say that, it's not 150 or 120,000 drawings of pure animation. We have sprite work that's background related too. So it's counting like the tile system and all that stuff too. So I don't really have a good gauge on what the what goes in, or how many frames of just the character animation are. All right, so I'm going to do that last one. I'm happy with that. And you can see now that it'll pan a little bit better. The head, at least. Where before you could see it was kind of stuttering a lot. It's flashing now because I didn't color it. So this is the frame before it hits. And this one I'll do an exact in between. It's also going to be such a fast drawing that this doesn't have to be anything to write home about. So I'm going to actually rough this one out. I like to rough out in blue or red, depending on the character. Got the teeth here. I usually start with the eyes and facial features. Got the ear going that way. Alright, get the little dirt details here. It looks like his ear disappears, so it's going to go back there. Yeah, the dirt goes in front of the ear, so I'll go like that. This eye starts to close. See how that plays out? And if I like it, we'll clean that up, color it, and then the head's done. Now when I'm this close, I'm gonna make another layer. Keep it on there. Now you can see I still have the onion skin on top, so I actually see the in-betweens, and I can clean up the rough without moving or changing the timing, which, you know, we spend a lot of time on. Alright. If there's any questions, too, about how we do the backgrounds, that's something Bob has had the most experience in. He's responsible for literally every background in the game right now. And then he was kind enough to help me with characters recently. I was doing every character for the first 11 months or so. And we're just two artists on the game, so we had to kind of divide and conquer. And frankly, he was always better at backgrounds than I was. And that was all done. I could open up a file, actually, and show you all the texture that he adds in the same program I'm drawing in, which is a vector-based program. And he did this incredible thing to make it look like paintbrush textures, but it's actually all vector. Alright, let me clean up the teeth. And, yeah, we got the whole, you know, most of the backgrounds are kind of finished now. We can check one thing off the list. Though Bob's working on some right now, so there is that. It feels nice to check things off, finally. We still have, like, cinematics and stuff we have to do, too. I feel like once we get to the cinematics, though, that's sort of our wheelhouse. Just like, oh, we just have to animate. You don't have to think about, like, a player controlling Becky. That's the thing that I get hung up on a lot. I was like, what will the player do? What do I want them to do, and what will they likely do? And usually all three never meet. So we're doing well. Thanks, Bunny Eat Muffin. We're doing well, thank you. So happy I could catch your stream again. What's that?
I remember from the old when we used to do this in the old days.
Oh, this was an old Twitch.
Follower, yeah.
Oh wow. Well, thanks for being so patient with us, because we stopped doing the live streams, and it had nothing. We stopped around when the pandemic hit, but it really didn't have anything to do with that per se. We just got at first, yeah, we got so busy with other projects, and at that point we were just doing our game on the side, and it was just all of a sudden all five of us were incredibly busy. So we were just like, well, let's kind of focus. Oh, no one knew what was going to happen. And I was like, oh, animation's going to be dead and all that stuff. So it was like, we just took on all this work. And it kind of, the streams got in the way of that. So I'm glad we can go back to doing this. Keeps us on our toes. All right. So let me color the skin here, and I think that's done with that. Okay. Let's see how that plays out. Okay, so if I just do the head, that looks fun to me. What's nice about this one, too, is since it's like this dirt thing, I get to add a layer of debris, which, if any animator knows and does, like, effect work, like, what you can get away with after you add debris is, you know, is almost criminal, because you can glaze over any bad keyframes, like this one, for instance. Like, we can have a layer of dirt and debris pop up, and, like, when he lands, and more dirt pop up. So any kind of thing that isn't looking exactly perfect, I will cover up with the dirt layer on this one. And the same, you know, with a lot of these characters. Every time a character gets hit, there's usually action lines, or maybe like a splatter of blood or spit or any of that stuff. So don't like sleep on debris. Like that is a big kind of part of fixing any animation problems you might have in terms of smoothness. All right, so I'm gonna work on the body now. I got the timing right here. I could click off that so I could see where the head is. That's kind of important here. And it's the same exact thing. His body's, he gets shot up in the air. Whoop. Like that. This is the time point. It's going to start falling, and you can see it's pretty subtle. Falling, and then big time. And then on the settle, just like I did with the head here, the hair, rather, or the grass, we're going to have that secondary kind of thing bounce back and forth. So if you're paying attention to the grass, you can kind of see it gives it an extra, just a little bit more impact and a little more playfulness. And I did the same thing with his legs here. They kind of fold over. And, you know, I want this pose at the end to be super like, oh, this guy's hurt. Let me attack him now. So I wanted to make him kind of land on his chest and all that stuff. All right. So I'm going to just do that timing again. I'm going to start with this keyframe. Ooh, do I want to rough this out? Yeah. It's something I might not try on live screen. Look like a fraud. Alright, so I'll just rough out some of the like bigger things that I'm worried about. Kind of just going for. Kind of got a ripped up shirt here, kind of like a potato sack. I went with all like kind of earth tones for this guy since he's actually coming from the earth. Okay, got the knee. So his foot is going back in space here. We're kind of going back, and it flips over there. So you have to kind of, I'm doing a bunch of things here. You're kind of following the neck and the torso, which is going down, but the foot is also going in space and around. So that's why I have it fold under here. And then it comes through here, and you can see if I do all the keyframes. Select them all. It's kind of hard to see, but if you can see the onion skin, you can kind of see the path of the feet going. Starting here, right? Going all the way around and flipping around and then settling and bouncing up. That's why arcs are kind of important in animation. Please don't leave us Linux keys out. I don't know what that means. What is that? What is it? Is it a different kind of computer? Okay. I'm the least technical guy on the team.
Or like, you know, like there's Windows, Mac, and then there's...
Oh, is there so that's like a different operating system.
I think, yeah, I'm not...
You see, I know the lingo. Operating system. I still got a iPhone 7 that my youngest son broke, so I don't even get stuff when I need to. What's that?
I saw the back of that phone before. It's not
Yeah, the back of my phone. Well, I have the cover on. I need stitches. Yeah, so I don't keep up with this thing, and we're working in Flash MX too, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Also, I don't want to spend thousands on a phone that my son's going to break again. Alright. Clean this up. I got all this sort of tethered kind of shirt going here. And that kind of, those kind of things, it gets a little confusing, but it really helps with that drag you get from when you're falling down and stuff. So I kind of like all these little imperfect characters almost, where they're not necessarily symmetrical, but they have a lot of kind of stuff hanging off them that gives a little bit more characteristics to them. And it helps for in-betweens, like if you kind of get into a rhythm and you know, like, oh, he has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of rips on this one. So like when you do the in-betweens, you'll know if I got 4 on that cleanup, then I did something wrong. And then the next pose, you know, it doesn't necessarily have 5. I'm not a huge proponent of like keeping things on strict model. When we have this cartoony element with this game, I like kind of making Becky get big sometimes when she's angry, or with the attacks, she doubles in size. When she's running, she's really up in the air. So, it's, I try to keep it kind of playful that way in terms of character. And it works with narration that way too. Not every story should be told in a whisper, and not everyone should be told yelling. So it kind of works that way narratively and visually. What did I saw someone say?
I'll make fun of phones.
Oh, my phone.
Some other people have old phones too.
Oh, okay.
What they-
At the end, I'll take the cover off and show you the spider web behind it.
It might not.
Yeah, I might actually get cut. Someone
It's
called.
just gonna disintegrate.
Yeah. I blame my son, but I think it was me. It's just easier to blame a toddler. Alright, this one, I'm not even gonna bother roughing out. The lines are pretty close. But the next few, I'm gonna have to, for sure. That's another way I save time, by telling myself I don't need to rough it out. And if it's a bad drawing, I'm like, well, I'm in a rush. Never been on an animated project where I was ahead of schedule, I think. Like in 23 years. You were on one, though.
The one Little Einstein was the most well run.
Yeah, a little about Bob and my career. We both had we both had animation careers in New York City. We both went to school at SVA, which takes place in Manhattan, is located in Manhattan. And Bob's, we had very similar career paths, but I just happened to work on more kind of adult-oriented animation, like for Comedy Central and MTV and stuff, and Bob kind of took the other route. This was just complete circumstance for both of us. You kind of take what you can get in terms of animation, but he had a lot more children's animation. So you did Umi Zoomies and Little Einsteins and what's the other one? Wonder Pets?
Wonder Pets. Yeah, that was.
Wonder Pets, and you had a few other kid ones, right? Or not really?
I guess it was just a lot of seasons that I was in.
Yeah. Back when we used to have seasons.
But then
When an animator could work for more than 6 weeks.
Fridays, the animated series.
Oh, Fridays. Yeah, that was Fridays, the animated series. That one we had some cross-pollination. I worked a little bit on that. Yeah, but he did a lot of kid stuff, and I just happened to work for a studio that focused more on I guess the teenage stuff, the college age stuff, and the Adult Swim stuff. But it was nice when we started the studio because there's different practices for kind of the genres of animation. But it all comes down to that you're always in a rush by the end. I'm just going to color these two to get rid of them. Zoomies. Still keep in touch with all those people too, so that's what I kind of like about animation. You just a lot of them, yeah, they're just still doing the same thing. Yes, of course, ask away. Natasha. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions like that. Upgraded season 3. All right. Let me. Now you see the foot here is tucked behind this shirt of his, so I'm gonna have to rough this one out for sure.
Oh shit. That one.
When the game comes out, what do you think about people speedrunning your game? I welcome anyone who wants to play the game any way they want.
I'm playing that way right now. So.
Yeah, when we're testing it, we try to go kind of as fast as we can to get through the certain stuff. I'm interested to see how fast someone could actually beat it. Honestly, I don't. The structure of the game might prohibit people from doing it as fast as they might want to, but I'm curious how long or how quick they can beat the game. So I'm all for it. The every time you hear about those things, though, it's crazy. It's like when that any kind of new AAA game comes out, it'll be like they beat it that night in 45 minutes. Like, how did they do that? No, I'm curious. But I do want also the people who play the game to kind of like we're going for an audience that kind of appreciates the cartooniness of it too. So I'm hoping anyone who gets to play it can have uh, like multiple experiences with it. You know, does it feel like a cartoon to you? Like all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to see what people think about it. Our kind of benchmark is: does it feel like a cartoon? Does it feel like you're playing a cartoon? And that's sort of where we kind of base everything on. And that's how we're kind of approaching it too, how we're making the game. So hopefully it has a little something for everyone. All right. Just gonna clean up this shirt. Yeah, that's the talk to Natasha again. She says, "I like how the game reminds me of Disney XD cartoons." We've actually worked with them on a few occasions and stuff. But yeah, we it's funny when we were coming up. There was like everyone called this kind of style of cartoons. Some of you might remember this, like they called it the Cal Art style. Um, I don't like maybe that was just an industry term, but there was a lot of like cartoons of like when I think of like early 2000s like Cartoon Network and there's you know people were saying every kind of the eyes look the same, the kind of the shape of the head look the same, the mouths look the same, so they kind of coined it the Cal Art style. But it was funny because the people who were making the cartoons that they were kind of uh, crowning that as were actually from SVA. They just happened to be in California, which I guess um, was the reason they were doing that. But we got to work, you know, SVA had Rebecca Sugar, who people will know from Steven Universe, and um, what's Ian's last name again?
Cordy.
Ian Cordy, who did OKKO, and that's what we actually worked on a game with the OKKO property. We were just Bob and myself were just the animators for the cinematics. Yes, let me. And it was called OKKO Let's Play Heroes, but we were all like SVA alumni at that point. And Bob actually, were you in Ian's grade, or he was ahead of you? And Rebecca Sugar, was she in your
I
grade?
think she was a
Or she?
grade or two below him, I want to say.
Okay. Yeah, and it was just you know this coincidence, but they both had like these mega hit shows, and they both came out there, and you know people kind of said the style felt like a Cal Art style, and I was like, actually they kind of came from the East Coast here. All right, now the hard keyframe, the one I've been avoiding. Love OK. Yeah, I love OKKO too. Ian showed us some stuff when we were, you know, we talked to him occasionally. They still do it on paper.
Yeah.
They were doing it on paper there, and I was like, it was such my like flash mentality brain. I was like, what do you mean they're not panning that? Because you know when they do it on paper, there's no panning. So like they were when Rad had to go down like off screen, I was like, oh well, you just pan that guy, and they're like, no, he showed me like the framework. And you know, we do things in Flash MX and try to keep it as traditional as we can, but there is something inherently so gorgeous about those hand-drawn things that they're still inking. And if you watch OKKO, from an animation perspective, I mean, you really start to appreciate what they managed to do on paper. I like the style. I grew up in the '80s. Same here. Shipped it overseas style. This seems way more feasible to make something in a small studio or make a bunch of episodes or games, till the emotion and storytelling is not lost. I agree. I'm gonna mess up that name from Twitch, but the comment I just read, I agree. I like the small studio aspect. I like the individualism it has. You really know the artist behind it, I think, when you do a small studio. And the bigger studios, it comes a little more corporate and kind of cookie cutter. And you have to make stuff that is readily can be animated overseas, so you have to have character turnarounds and all that stuff. And I have nothing against that. You know, the shows like He-Man and stuff I grew up on, I loved, but clearly done overseas on a budget. Um, but with the kind of personal touch of these small boutique studios that we kind of try to run, try to do our business that way, you do get a little more personal. I guess. Oh, Casey's here. Oh man, Casey's the one person I got to meet in person.
Okay.
At that. Well, we did. We can wrap it up.
That's
No, how's it going, Casey? It's great to have you back.
1980. That's what it is.
Oh, that was Casey?
Yeah,
That was his
that's
thing? Oh my god. Oh, Casey and I probably already talked about this at Too Many Games that one year. Yeah, but back to your point, I do like the small studio, and you know, I'm a little biased since we run one, but it just has a little more personality. I used to work at this studio called Augenblick Studios. It's a Brooklyn-based studio, and I remember him and I talking. The guy who made Augenblick, Aaron Augenblick, and he kind of said something that always stood out, and I always kind of took it from him. But he looked at his studio as sort of like an indie rock band, and like the foundation of of indie rock really was like, especially in a certain era, it was like you just you just made music with people in your neighborhood. It was like, can you play drums? It's like, not really, but you started learning. And when you get it like, you're never going to get the best drummer or the best singer or the best guitarist necessarily, but when you can all work together and make something kind of interesting sounding, you know, he considered that a success. And that's sort of how he kind of modeled his company. It was like he had all these kind of animators on his team, and they all had their certain personalities and their certain strengths. Then no one was the best at any of it probably, but it all sort of made these really fun projects together. And that's sort of what I look at as our kind of game studio, is all just kind of close friends that work together and trying to make the best thing we can. And you know, polish is not we don't want this AAA polished game, really. We don't expect it to be like that. We're just trying to make the best, like, triple I, as they call it, independent game we can. So I always like that kind of metaphor he used for it. Casey, oh man, it's good to hear from you again. Casey, where did was it Too Many Games or was it MagFest? Was it Too Many Games? Yeah, I love Too Many Games. That was so good. Wish we could go back to those things. Yeah, that's when we were first starting out on this. Anyone who's played those games in those little ones, and we had a small following at that point. They played #Blood with the character Becky, but we never animated the, like, what we kind of called like the Master Sword part, which is the field hockey stick. So they were just swinging with her fist and stuff, because we were kind of making a game from the beginning a little bit for the demo. So we were like, you had to earn your kind of master weapon. And we never got to that part until, you know, we were slated to make this. So anyone who's played those demos, you would get a completely different experience now. A lot has changed since then. All right. Get this arm dragging down here. I'm going to move on to the settle animation of him landing, and you'll see the arm kind of comes down secondarily too, as well as the legs. I kind of follow the same timing as the grass on his head. So you can see here, this is the first where his jaw hits, but like the legs don't hit their bottom point till a few frames later, and same with the hair here. Had a good time meeting you, gentlemen. You've done so much. Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm glad you're noticing it. We feel like we've done a lot. It's a kind of project though that I'm not burnt out from drawing on it, which is rare for animation. There's always a point in almost every project that I felt like that I was like, I'm kind of done with this. Even personal stuff. Though personal stuff take a lot longer to get there. But this one, no. And I don't know if it's because there's maybe when we get closer to the finish line, I might feel that way. But it just, something about creating this game and this pretty expansive experience is just really rewarding. And I get to do stuff different every day, too. Like tomorrow, I'll be working on a different character. So there's like a lot of variety, which keeps everything which keeps burnout low, I feel like.
I can't speak for the programmers.
For the programmers, I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know if they're a little burnt, but they're they're kicking a lot of butt. It's from like someone who knows nothing about programming but played video games a lot and like grew up watching cartoons a lot. There's that magic when you first start animation, when you finally see something move like that you created. You're like, whoa, that's really, it's this really kind of cathartic feeling. And that goes away when you've been in the industry for a while. But then getting to take your creation and taking like a game controller and actually moving it. I was like, it felt like when I first saw on a lunchbox. Do people know what lunchboxes are anymore?
Yeah,
Not the one that I bring my snacks in, but when I first saw animation move on the animation I made in college, and it was this really like anyone who's knows that feeling. It came right back when we started this game. So it was, and it hasn't left yet too. When I get to finally play the game and seeing all the hard work that everyone's been putting in, you get this really cool feeling, or really feels accomplished or something. So it's something I highly recommend. Plus, I like the indie game scene. I feel like it's... I feel more at home there than the animation scene. Snacks, I like snacks. I hope you don't get sick of this game. I don't think I will. I hope you guys don't either. Keep tuning into the streams, and if we get less and less followers, I'll know we hit our threshold. No, I can't see. It's one of those things. Like once I finish this character, I'll create another monster or villain, and then I'll be like invested in that. And there's a ton of variety when you have to make this kind of big world with this. And then when there is a point where we finished all of Becky's animation for sprites, and or so I thought. I see some stuff I still have to do for sure. But then we moved on to like NPCs, and then we filled out the world with a bunch of those guys. And then it kind of rejuvenated that feeling again. And I don't know, something about a game, like a top-down game, like you get to see these large swaths of the world all in one. Just so everything feels alive. It's a really cool feeling. We are too excited for the release of this game. We certainly are. But thank you. I really do appreciate this when we set out to do this a while ago, we were just looking sort of like a side project to make a video game. Like, we had no real intentions of doing. We had no ideas. We just know we wanted to make a game. That's when it was just Cody, one of the programmers, Bob, and myself. And Cody actually looked through our pitch packets and picked out #Blood, which was, a pitch we made a while back. And, from there kind of clicked. I was like, yeah, that would kind of be an interesting game. We struggled with the look of it for a while, but we always, I kind of think a good secret for any animator, always have kind of a side passion project on the side to just keep you creative. There's a lot of burnout of animators just in the industry, and I think it comes from kind of repetitive, the repetitiveness of your work, and then you get kind of tired of doing the same task and stuff, and to kind of break free from that, I think the answer is not draw less, but draw more differently, and kind of respark everything. Oh, does Greg? Those who don't know, Tin Heart Interactive is the writer, Greg Lane. Sounds like it could. Yeah, maybe it is for any artist. That animation seems very repetitive, though. Like, you're just traditional animation anyway. You're kind of just altering one drawing a little bit every frame. So no, you can get in trouble with burnout pretty quick. I might stagger these last frames to feel that the impact is not high enough. And I'm going to put some debris on there. I'm going to rough out some debris because I also want to get to a sprite, like a new sprite, where he would kind of burrow back into the ground if you choose not to kill him there. So yeah, these sprites are interesting because you kind of have to think of like every scenario what would happen. That is, what happens if, say, each character gets 3 hits to kill? What happens if you swing twice, then run away? Like, what kind of pose does the character return to? So you kind of have to keep in mind, like it's not just, I'm going to make a walk cycle, I'm going to make an attack cycle, I'm going to make a kill cycle, and he's done. It's usually around 20 or 30 individual sprites per character to kind of get anything that might happen to them. Now, this guy, we kind of have an advantage here in terms of like angles, because he's underground the whole time and it's just that dirt path moving. Now that dirt path can go left, right, up or down, and it'll look right on a top-down kind of thing. Whereas I'm going to bring another character. I'll show you some other characters where that's not such the case. And we're going to go... That's when I did that one? Oh, gosh. Okay, so these are kind of like the foot soldiers of our game. If we're kind of doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, think of like this as sort of the every vampire, like every man vampire. Big kind of brutish guy, but these are all the attacks, every angle. So this is 3/4. This is back, 3/4 back. And 3/4 back still. So you could see the amount of sprites per, and this is one character. Now I went, I tried to go way overboard with this guy because he's sort of like, he could fit almost anywhere in the world, and it kind of makes sense in terms of vampire attacks. And I don't want to go too far here because there's something at the end of this that you guys were gonna just have to buy the game to see. Okay, yep. Oh, no one freeze frame that. So yeah, and you can see there are thousands of drums just as one guy. This guy that I'm working with now, the dirt vampire, not so much, you know. I just got this kind of. I made sure his like movement was just this thing underground, and he can circumvent Becky. He can go around her, go up, and then this bottom attack will always work out for him. Where that guy, you know, we want him chasing Becky. We want him kind of cornering her and doing all the stuff that this kind of hulking, you know, nemesis would do. So we have to consider what would happen on the screen if Becky moves left. We have to have an answer for him moving right, you know. So that's where you get the real chunk of the labor. Not burnout per se in writing, but you can feel stuck. I mean, but you can feel stuck on how to get certain characters to say what you want. We have a lot of different NPCs. Oh, this is it. Yeah, this is Greg. Okay. Greg knows what. Yeah, Greg, you know, he's writing a lot of dialogue for this game, and this game has. I don't know how many characters, to be honest. We should count, but we made this town Carpentersville. And we filled it out as a small town would be filled out. So there's a NPC wise, I don't want to kind of say more than we have, but you know, between 80 and 100 NPCs right now. And Greg's writing dialogue for all of them, and depending on what part of the game you're talking to them, you know. So there's a lot to consider with the writing as well. You know, we're making a roughly 7 hours of content, and it's very narrative heavy. So I'm sure Greg feels the weight of that a lot. Okay, so let's see here. I think I'm gonna stagger the frames though, at least a few of them right here to there, just to see what that looks like. It might not work because of the follow through, but if it doesn't, we'll just go back to what we have here. So just reverse the frames here and.
This is a play on Carpenter.
John Carpenter?
It's John Carpenter.
Yes. Yeah, we've never shied away from like what we're kind of referencing. We pay homage to a lot of things that we're that kind of that we like creatively. So you'll see names of characters in the game that will reference other vampire stuff. A lot of kind of 80s-ish kind of stuff, even though this kind of takes place in, you know, it's a little nebulous. But yeah, we never shied for it. It's like we like the game Zelda, we like the Cartoon Network shows from that era, and I look at it as paying homage to it. It's like, this is what I feel like a game would look like if it came out then. But yes, Carpenterville is John Carpenter. He's, you know, Bob does all the music too. All the music you hear now, so. What's that? Mary Carpenter. I might do that even though the legs don't work. I don't know if I like that. You know what? I'm just going to cover it with debris right now. Maybe I can stagger it after he lands. I'll play with timing like this sometimes just to see what it feels like. But I don't hate that. Let me do one more thing. I'm going to stagger those two.
Greg says there's 104 NPCs.
104. So I was right between. I was right with more than 80. Yikes! We have to do talkies for them. I think I'm happy with that. We'll cover that up with debris. Yeah, I like that. I'm okay with that. Okay. I'm going to rough out some debris, and then I'm going to get to the part where he kind of sinks under, because I spent an hour on that. Alright, so debris, I'll start from the frame that, the initial frame where he's coming up, and I'll usually kind of encase whatever the part that's going up or the direction it's going in. And then most effects I do, I tend to go pretty straight ahead with it. I might skip a frame here or there and then re in between it, but 104. Christ. So the debris comes up. I'm going to start breaking it off at a certain point because I want it to go faster than the character itself. So this is still going to fling up. Kind of follow that arc, right? And I never really count like these little like parts on the side, like all these. You could sit there and count all the little pieces of debris like they did in like Fantasia with that lava monster, but I don't have the time, so I'll just kind of eyeball it and just try to keep it not too jarring. And I always keep my debris like I want it never to hit the ground. I want it to like it'll disappear before it falls. Hits the ground because you never know where the character is going to register. So you have to kind of be conscientious about like where that's going to land. Right? And then this could start falling down with him. But dissipating on this as well. And then when he hits, we'll start it over again. So he hits and this pile of dirt kind of pops up so we can kind of go like outward, I feel like, on both sides. And then I think it'll feel a little more impactful. So, and then those things will shoot up and out. There we go. And that's when you can get the trail off and the debris separates here too. And then that will eventually flop over because the arc is still going that way. So this part right here is gonna end up over here somewhere. Just kind of be aware of the arcs. This part shooting the opposite way, so it'll end up over here. And I definitely want this to disappear before the last keyframe, because the last keyframe is the first frame of the idle. And if I mess it up that way, then there'll always be sort of this, there'll be a lot of inconsistency, so the debris just has to be gone by then. So even if it feels fast at the end, it'll go right into the moving. And you see how I wasn't all that thrilled with the settle. I felt it was a little too slow. But this kind of dirt debris adds a little more impact here, you know. She's kind of humiliating him, so you don't want it to be like, is he landing too soft? And I'm okay with that. This one, just an ease in, ease out. When I do these, I make sure to kind of favor a side. So if he's going down, I'm just going to rough out something real quick. I don't want to waste your guys' time with kind of the subtler stuff. Like, no one needs to see me in between. That's not good streaming. But, so what do I mean by that? Okay, so his head starts up here, and it goes down there. I will follow, like, the arcs, or I'll follow the drag of the hair here. Not the hair, the grass. So, the grass starts here, and it ends up over here. And depending on the direction, it should sway. So I will bend it this way, and it'll end up on the other side over there. And then on the reverse, I'll do the opposite with that. And I kind of do the same with any, like, appendage that, like, their ears are kind of these pointy things. Sometimes I'll add a little bit. You don't want to go crazy with the ears because it'll feel too independent of the head. But like, I will favor the side and bend that way. Something like that, right? Same with this grass. We're going to bend it that way. These lips kind of have a little bit of bend right there, right? And then the rest can sort of in between as it would. Whereas, like, if I were to just reverse these frames, they would technically still be in betweens, but it wouldn't be kind of that true blue um, back and forth that I'm looking for. And I'll do the same thing with this side now. Remember, now the hair's down here. Keep calling it hair, but it's grass. Same with the ears, and kind of follow suit that way. There'll still be an ease in, ease out, but these kind of secondary things always will move at a slightly different rate. And you can see, like, if you look at a tree branch blowing in the wind, you can see, like, the base of it goes somewhere and then the leaves follow through. You know, it's just sort of that kind of principle. And then you kind of get this it's just a little more alive that way, right? So now that I roughed that out, I'm a little OCD, so I'm going to clean that up. You animate so fast. Oh, really? Gosh, I wish I was faster, but I appreciate it. When I do these streams, I'm like, am I gonna get enough done for the audience? Because I don't feel like I get enough done. And every time I start the day, I'm like, I'm gonna get this much done of animation, and I leave always disappointed. I was like, I had to learn to, tamp it down a little bit. Do I have the right brush? Yep. Well, when I start like these characters, I was like, well, the idol will be so easy. It's still 17 drawings, which will, there's no shortcut for that. Getting those 17 drawings done, I still have to sit here and draw 17 individual frames, so there's always going to be the time factor. But just because I think of idols as sort of the simple animation, I just think it should go quicker. Alright, let's clean up this one. And these are the kind of in-betweens, like when I finally get to in-betweening this, where I will not rough out. Like, these are so quick, or so close, that I don't need to really worry about that. For the same reasons I went into earlier. You're paying attention to Becky most of the time. And I kind of try to remind myself of that every time I'm working on these. And I have the luxury of playing the game when I want to, too. And, like, then I'll be like, okay, I was worried for a while about, like, one of the first enemies we did. Like this cockroach. And, I animated that 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And, when you work on something for 4 years, you will hopefully naturally get better with what the final product is. And I'm like, does this cockroach even feel like the game anymore? It's like, I made the cockroach as sort of this easy enemy because we were making demos, and I was like, I don't know what we're making yet. I don't necessarily know the story. So I just did this thing really quick. Forgot the eye. And now I watch them again, and I'm like, gosh, I would really like another stab at that. But, then I play the game, and then by the time you're done fighting the cockroaches, I was like, well, maybe I could do something more important. No pressure. The pressure's on. Alright. So this will be the classic ease in, ease out. I'll show you the timing of that, like frame-wise. You're always faster towards the middle. That rubber hose animation always does that same timing. So frame 1, your first drawing. Frame 13, the keyframe. and 25 would be the first drawing. I'll erase that at the end so it doesn't stutter. Then 7 and 19. Those are your in-betweens for that. And then I do 2 in the middle. 1 as an ease out or ease in. Like that. So, if you were to do like a visual representation of that. Get a motion. I group this so it's like that. And you see how that's very even? Looks really janky. So you go in the keyframe, right? You do negative 100, positive 100. This is if you're puppeting. Negative 100, positive 100. Feels a little better, right? And then to get that kind of natural feel like this is like traditional animation, kind of stagger the keyframe. Not stagger the keyframes, but just time it out a little different so it's not all on ones. Get a more kind of natural feel. And anyone who's played or watched those like 1930 rubber hose cartoons, you'll see all the flowers in the background doing the same exact kind of timing, and that's what they did back in the day to keep everything alive. All right, same deal with the feet here. The feet are starting up here, they're going down there, so we're gonna curl the toes to do the exact opposite of what the hair was doing. This I'm gonna try on the fly without roughing it out. See how it looks. So you see I'm kind of favoring this side right here, this toe. Kind of keeping the lines though like a true in-between, right in the middle there. Same with the clothes here, right? This is all fabric, so we can lean that way. Lean that way. Lean towards the middle there. Get like that. Alright. I could do this sort of the same thoughts with the fingers, so I'm going to favor that side. Get that done. This head's covering most of that, but I always recommend just drawing through. You'll never know when you want to move the head, and then you'll be sitting there fixing extra keyframes. You can just do it sort of that way in the first place. Top foot here, so we're going to favor that side. I didn't save in a while. Ooh. And that's another reason I like Flash MX. It does. I'm gonna eat my words one of these days, but it.
On the screen actually, but it was a file. There was a file that was not opening.
What file was it back? Oh, the hatchling file. Yeah. Oh, the master where Becky's attacking all them.
I couldn't open it. So
that thing is giant. I think it's like a minute and a half though. That file. Yeah, we have files here where I put like I try to make it pretty, and like it will be something for like a Twitter audience or something too. So I add a background, and then I put Becky in there and attacking all the another one of those characters, sort of like that feral vampire, where it has a ton of angles and all the animation that goes with it, and then I cite examples on it too. And when you do that, and you have 3 attacks and 3 hits and 5 angles, you will get like almost a 2-minute file, which if you're working in Flash, please break up your animation in 30-second increments or a minute increments depending on the complexity, because you will get crashes. This is not, and this program is impervious to that. Oh, 100 chats again. We did it. What's next after you finish the game? I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna go to sleep. Bob and I will work on some freelance stuff for, I don't know. I don't know who will have us back after we stopped working with everyone for 2 years to work on this. We might be beating the streets. We could stream a lot longer. I really don't know. The game has just sort of taken up all of the real estate in my brain to even think about like what's next for the studio. Um, Ideally, would be to work on another video game, or see what the video game side of the studio can do. Um, but it's a question that we should ask everyone on our team. What's everyone's plans? So this side's gonna bend up that way. Yeah, it's been an incredibly long journey though, like the last 5 years to get to this point. Um, I mean, we have the luxury of actually working on this full time, but I haven't thought of a life without hashtag blood in it in a very long time, and I don't even know. I'll probably be like, once I'm finished, I'll be relieved, and then this kind of sadness will probably be over me because it's like this thing you created and now it's just out in the world, and then it's like, now what? I had that kind of same feeling when I worked on this giant project for we were going to Sundance at the studio I talked about earlier, Augenblick Studios, and it was pretty early in my career. It was like 2007. We got invited to Sundance because we animated part of this movie called The 10, which had like a lot of, you'll know the stars now, but it was like a lot of up and coming people. And we worked really hard on it, and it was a really tight deadline, and it was all shot on ones, and we had to color each line. Like every line color wasn't just this like a darker version of the color itself, so it was just so much labor. And all of a sudden it was finished, and we were all just sort of sitting there at the studio, and we finished it early. We finished it at like 11 one morning, like the day it was due, and we just sat there, and it was this weird, like we were so anxious to finish it, but like we all came to the conclusion, it's like, yeah, we're gonna miss this, even though it was like this completely anxiety ridden and very note heavy, and it was like, well, this is going to Sundance, that means something kind of mentality. And I remember walking in the day, and I was like, I'm just so excited this is going to be over. And literally 10 minutes after we finished it, I was like profoundly sad. But then, then we started a new project, and we got to celebrate it in Sundance, and it was a really nice experience. Like, I was a super young animator. I was only 27 at the time. At 27. And I was in like in this like VIP room with all these kind of celebrities, and we were all enjoying the movie. And our it's this long movie, 90-minute movie, right? And our section was like 3 minutes, and we felt like we were on top of the world, and it was it's like 2% of the movie. All right, so that works. But yeah, I remember being happy, and it's a weird feeling. It's hard to explain when you finish something that you work so hard on. All right, okay. So we got the idol kind of established. We have the dirt debris here. So now Becky runs away. You don't end up hurting this guy. Next week, we'll get into like what happens when you swing at this guy. We'll do like the damages. He'll have like a 2 or 3 hit cycle before he dies. So we'll need 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hits, a death cycle, and what happens if you hit him once? What does he go back in the ground? All that kind of stuff that we'll have to establish, but we'll get into that, and that'll be a fun one next week because those are really kooky drawings. But we're gonna focus on what he's gonna do once he leaves. So, is this a new one? Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate this symbol. Modify, duplicate, vulnerable idle. So I'm going to do vulnerable idle. I'm going to keep that name, and I use a hyphen, and then to dirt idle, I think I called the other one, which will mean that that's a transitional animation when there's that many hyphens in it. So I'm going to grab the first frame of this idle. I'll grab that. I'll just copy it. Now everything's registered because I keep duplicating the symbol. I can erase all this. And I can place this anywhere. Keep it at the second mark right now. Okay. So the trick to this is, okay, we got this guy and he has to get into the dirt again. What can we do with that? And this is where you can have some fun because, remember, Becky's not here now because you didn't decide to kill him. So we can, you know, get a little bit bigger here. Excuse me. All right. This chart means nothing, so I'm going to keep that blank. Definitely. Okay, yeah. So my thoughts were, I was thinking about this earlier. We can have him kind of, since his arms are down here, right? Kind of almost do like this hand, whoa, way too big. First, kind of do this handstand to get back up and kind of dive into the dirt a little bit. So I'll just keep these super rough right now just to get the timing. And all the vampires' heads kind of have this egg head shape. So I'll just really kind of get that down and know the ears, and then you could do that to kind of see where the features on the face fall. And this, you know, you can zoom out as much as you want for this. I'll probably go closer like that, right? Same with this hand, because this hand will go down. So the arms are going to start, or the legs rather, will start shooting up. Like that. Because I want this to be pretty quick. So just get the arcs of those down. So we'll go like that. Get the dirt pile here. So the dirt pile is going to start shrinking. So that'll be the up, and then we're going to kind of like sink in real quick so we can start like getting kind of those action-y lines. Have the feet dive in like that. And this is just basic shapes right now. And when I do that, I sink in super fast here. And then we'll settle into this one, so the dirt will kind of go really exaggerated down. Kind of zip in, just that for the... And then the dirt can shoot back up. We can overshoot and settle. And this is just to generalize the timing, you know, so you can add all the action lines and the dirt and the debris and stuff. So that, I would even do this quicker. Like, to get to that, to go to that, I would want a little bit quicker. So I'll take out some frames there. So if you do that right, you can kind of start seeing something happening here. So I'm going to grab these 3 frames, right? File new. I'm just going to show you kind of like when you link all 3 together. Okay, so this is kind of a normal 960 by 540 screen here. So you see this guy's huge. But remember I said we shrink them down to 25%. So that's what this is. If this was a television screen, this is roughly the size of the dude. Just going to make this long here. Okay, so he shoots out, lands there. At this frame, I'm going to swap it out to the idle that we did. Now the idle's not going to go to frame 1, so that will link, and it should go directly to it since we copied and pasted the frames and made sure that everything was registered. So we got him there. Then, let me grab the other one. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to give it one cycle here, down, up. That's frame 1 again. I clicked it right. So down here, you'll see the properties. That'll say frame 1. That's when you want to swap the symbol. And that's when he shoots up and out. Okay, so then we would take that, and we can swap that one out. Kind of have a nice little cycle here. And then, you know, then he would be kind of back to his initial state here. Swap out that.
Somebody asked about animate brushes.
Animate flash brushes?
Yeah,
Or?
or like, what's a good setting? But we wouldn't.
Okay. I know you're in Flash channels. Well, what brush settings do you recommend in Animate? I'm on a Mac and couldn't run MX. Yeah, running on X on a kind of a newer operating system definitely takes some looking into. I'm not sure about the Mac.
Do it anymore on mine.
You could do it on your Mac, and you had a pretty older one too.
Yeah, you couldn't do it.
I always recommend for a brush, zooming in to a level that you're almost uncomfortable with, like you can hardly see anything, and then the thicker the brush, I find, the more control I have over it. So I'll go to like one of the
But that
thicker
also, like,
brushes.
what did we do for? I forget what we even did for the. Remember, it had like the smoothing stuff too.
Yeah, there was a smoothing setting on Animate, and you'll have to forgive me. I haven't opened it up in a while, but I remember there was like it was between 0 and 100, and 0 being like very few vector kind of fixations, and 100 being like super, like if you hit a line it would be super clean. We always kind of hovered around 40, I remember, for that, and that was because it gave the best feel, more like MX. So thicker brush, zooming in a little bit closer than you're probably comfortable with, and kind of getting used to that. And you do those two things, and then by the time you zoom out to what the character should look like on the screen, any kind of imperfection that you didn't want will be glazed over, and all the little imperfections that you do want, because let's be honest, we do like the way a human can draw. So you want those little imperfections do show up on that kind of thing. It takes a little bit while to clean up, but you get used to it pretty quick. I remember first learning on MX, I'm like, I can't draw this close, and you do kind of get used to it. So it's a little kind of tweak of the mind there, because it's not like drawing on paper like we used to back in the day. But you will achieve that kind of look, I believe, if you do that. I'm curious, do you use Flash for the library system, or is it just because you prefer the animation tools? We do have library systems in here, and it has the symbol system we're familiar with. Excuse me. All these are done in symbols, and we duplicate the symbols, and that way everything stays registered, and that way I can kind of put together something like this really quick just by swapping the symbols. So I do prefer the library system in Flash, and you get a nice clean thing on everything's on the same layer. Alright, so we got this. And then the cycle continues. Let's just loop playback. And I'm just going to cut to this frame because that'll feel a little bit better because it's not animated yet. And then you got something there. And I could change the timing of this kind of thing too. I don't know if I kind of want that on 25 so it like bounces back, right? Yeah. And that's how it would look. You can kind of cycle and continue over and over. Alright, so I'm gonna just get rid of that, and that's just kind of a garbage file, and we'll start cleaning up this one here. Okay, so I want that on frame 25. I just like keeping everything kind of on, you know, on intervals of a second. So I'll do another rough pass because I couldn't possibly clean up this one. It's too crude. I'll go to something like 150 sometimes. Maybe 100. Get the full picture here. Then we'll do a rough pass here. Kind of shape out the heads a little bit. Like that. Gotcha. Oh, Brawl Holodev. Oh, really? That game was awesome. We use the library system. Plays nicely with the engine, but I've always looked out the window and wondered what was available with other softwares. We I mean, I don't know if we're using this program. I don't know if we can consider this even full potential because we're kind of just using it as a drawing apparatus that can, occasionally import audio and all that kind of stuff too. So we're not, we're barely using any of the programs to its full potential. I think. I just happen to like the way it draws, and it's good for small studios. All right, so. Okay, so this. Again, I'm not going to go crazy counting like these. I just want to make this kind of silhouette look kind of cool. So I'd be like, oh, he had 5 like tethers here and 4 in the other one. I'm a firm believer that no one's really paying that much attention to that kind of stuff. And I'm just trying to make the best silhouette for each character. In a game where a lot is going on, silhouettes are super important. Yeah, the Pearl Hala thing was that was really cool. We did what? Yeah, we did a pretty long time ago. Yeah. No, I love. I really do enjoy the indie games scene. It's just a bunch of creative people. Yeah, all this stuff is just problem solving too. It's like you get a group of problem solvers or something. I think that's all animation is too. It's like we have a problem with a story. Like you're presented with a story, and the problem is how do we tell the story now? And whether it's visually, and then there's a million different ways you can sort of approach it, and that's all it is really. It's like how do I convey what's in my head to the audience? And gaming is one step further, where it's like how can I convey it while they're actually interacting with it. So it's just a bunch of creative people, and I've always been fascinated with the programming side of things, even though I never took the time to learn it myself. I think the people who kind of birthed the video game movement are just like these underrated geniuses. How do you like it on the art? Oh, really? That's cool. Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome. Yeah, that game looks fantastic. Brawlhalla, that is. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate it. Okay, so you see how the legs kind of follow through here, but what we're gonna want is while he's kind of floating up here, for the legs to straighten out because they're bending, and then we want them to kind of arch up. So you kind of get that thing, and then we can change the timing again. So this one, the head's here, but we're going to kind of just slightly lower it while these things kind of shoot up too. So his head's going down, right? His clothes are going up, his legs are going up. And that's just sort of the principle of like that follow-through thing that I mentioned earlier. And then we can adjust the timing as we see fit. And then, if you're kind of, I mean, I'm not in love with this drawing, so maybe I'll fix that a little bit. but the feet are still arching here. And I'll probably separate the dirt from this, like down there, because I don't want, I'm just focusing on the character here. I don't want to mess up what that should look like. And you can see I already did kind of mess up with it. You see how thin it is here and then how thick it ends up there. So I'm going to have to extend it a little bit further. Like it should be up a lot higher. So I'm just going to kind of focus on the character here and we'll worry about the dirt last. Okay, so to get from here to there, you can even do a little downward antic. I think that'll kind of indicate that he's going down. Like indicate that the idle's over too. So I'll zoom in on that. I'll push his head out here a little bit. This arm is going to start coming down. So like his wrist snaps back, but his forearm's coming down. This one's pressing down a little bit more. His shoulder's going up. Clothes are coming down, and then his back is starting to arch a little bit, as well as the legs coming down. Or this leg coming down, this leg will be coming up. Can alternate things like that. So you can see if you're following like the head, and like you usually, like I make the eyes red to like, that's a very distinct choice I'm making because that stands out amongst all this brown too. So naturally your eyes will focus on sort of the brighter, kind of more vibrant color, and that's what we'll do with this one too. So if you see this little flash of red down here, his eyes get pretty big up here or down here, your eye will naturally follow the same eye contact that he's making. And then you got that. And that's where we'll start cleaning up. Animators need to have fixes. Yes. Well, luckily we get to break the physics rules too. Like when I don't like timing, I'm like, oh, or I don't like the gravity, I just speed it up. Okay, so when I'm doing this, right, I won't clean up right like the first frame because that's sort of the antic. I want to kind of do the keyframes first, and this is the first one I did. So I'm gonna take all this stuff and move it up to a different layer, keeping the timing though, because I do like the timing. And just focus on this drawing right now. Now I'm gonna keep the dirt away, so I'm just gonna focus on the anatomy of his body right now. Animation physics, yeah. No, what's nice about cartoons is you can break those rules at any time too. And we're doing like a cartoonier game, so we get to play with that too. When the depending on what's happening in the game, you know, we have serious moments and we have like levity and all that stuff. So these kind of goofier characters, I like to play with like the cartoonier side of things. So we can play with the timing a lot on his thing, and I don't think it'll feel too goofy. Get this there. We got that grass going up. The mouth can break the shape of his jawline here. We can go like that if we need. Alright, now I'm going to work on the shirt itself. If you clean up, and this is when I was talking earlier about line weight, you see, like, not every line I'm lining up is going to be this perfect clinical feel. It should have a little bit of life to it. I just want to make sure, like, if the shirt's connected back there, to arch down with it. Okay, so his hands are in the dirt, so I will do an overlay for his hands, but the dirt will be separated in this case. Go straight down there. Every vampire just has 3 fingers, sort of like a thumb, and 2 kind of sharp claws. That's just the way we designed it. Going down like that. Sometimes I add shadow to it too, just to give it a little more depth. Kind of frame out the head a little differently too. Got the eye. Alright, so I got that. I'm gonna make sure the arch of the foot is right. All the vampires have like these sharp features, so it's like their knees and elbows, I'll try to make it as kind of a hard angle as I can. And I think it breaks away from the cartooniness of, like, say, Becky's character or the NPCs. It gives them a more distinct look. What does this foot look like? Alright. S-curve there. Sharp angle again. And I always try to frame out the head as best I can. So even though his thigh might feel a little thick here, I'm still trying to frame out the head, and I don't want any of those tangents. With all these kind of things on him too, like this guy had a ton of tangents that you had to kind of be aware of. So I'm going to color this. Behind the mouth is pure black. Inside the mouth is the same color as the dirt. Ooh, I colored that wrong, didn't I? Nope. Okay. The shirt's a different color. Brown. Same with the legs. Can't forget the grass. Got his other ear too. I'm gonna add that. Just add the ear real quick. Still trying to be wary of those tangents. Did it change to place her in high school? Yes, we just kind of changed it to be a little bit of more of a transition for her because, like, we start, like, the first day of high school, first day of new town kind of thing, so we just thought we'd up her from middle school to high school. It just seemed like more of, kind of a character thing for her. Like, that's, I feel like, personally for me, that was, like, a scarier time going to high school, plus you're going to a new town and making new friends, and you know, that being the new kid out of high school in a new town just seemed a little more kind of helpful to tell her story. So we got that. Now I'm gonna do the antic down. Plus, we worked on it for 5 years, so if she's canon, she should be 20 soon. Was that comic that... Wasn't there a comic back in the old, like, that actually aged its comic characters? It's like, I'm gonna say it wrong, it was like Family Circus or something did it, and it was like... I always loved that idea, actually. It's always weird, like, I was a giant Simpsons fan. And there was like episodes of like Marge, right, where it's like where she was a hippie, because it was like, you know, when I grew up, but like she stays perpetually 37 or whatever she is. So now there's like flashbacks of her in like the 90s, and I was like, I always found it a little strange. Especially they kind of reference the real world, and it's like you've had this Maggie character now, like this baby for so long. Yeah. No, I mean they must be doing something right there in their 45th season or whatever. All right, so I want to make sure the head here has the dirt right. Okay, yep, so that. Arch down here. Now, if I wanted to make this a little bit easier, it's such a quick move, but like, sorry, won't do it here. But if you want like an easier time in betweening it, I would isolate the head in this case, right? And make all the roughs, then puppet the head, and then do it that way. I don't think it's gonna be necessary here because it's gonna be kind of a quick move. But if you want like the sort of the best bang for your buck that way, I recommend puppeting the head where you can. But that's about it though in terms of puppeting for me. I don't like going puppet crazy. Like inside the head sometimes, like for NPCs we'll isolate the eyes too to add blinks and all that stuff, but we try to go as few layers as we can. It kind of gives us the excuse to animate them on the same chart, and it'll be a little easier to kind of get your bearings, because once you finish the eyes and the head, then you're done with it. Whereas if like we're separating the ears and everything else, it could just get really cumbersome. All right, so I'm gonna turn that off. All right. Alright, so this leg's going up though because his back's arching that way. Alright, so if that's cleaned up a little bit better. Okay, I like that. That feels about right. So you can see the head's going down and the shoulders going up a little bit, but that's sort of the way you would sort of hoist yourself up. Not everything should be moving in the same, like in exact unison. That's how you get that kind of puppety feel. Nothing wrong with it, but I just would prefer that kind of more traditional way of doing it. Okay, so that's down there. Okay, let's clean that up. I'm going to change the color once again. Alright, we got about 10 minutes left, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit of promotional work here. Pay the bills. Where you can find our work. Always on Twitter, occasionally on Facebook, sometimes on Instagram. We're also featured on TikTok. Greg can send you all the links for the TikTok stuff. Bob will shortly post some of the stuff up there. Now, if you really want to go above and beyond and support us, you go ahead and wish list this game, which we have the wish list here on Steam. That does a bunch of things for us. Morally, it's great. We get a big kick out of everyone being so supportive of that. It helps the publisher see that we're up to some good and all that stuff. So that really is the best way to support us. And if you know, word of mouth too. We're this grassroots kind of studio. Bob and myself started this studio with nothing, pretty much, and it's all been word of mouth. So if you know someone who's interested in something like this video game, or just interested in animation and would like to see me draw and do all this stuff, tell them. We try to do this every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and YouTube Live.
Casey wishlisted it.
Oh, Casey, thank you. Dude, Casey's the best. I met, when we met, it was just so nice to meet him there at Too Many Games, and we already had this relationship sort of like about #blood with him and stuff. And you just meet him in person. Casey's this amazing artist, and it was so cool to see all that. Like, it's this weird feeling you get when you're making this, because people have only our artwork to see about what this game is, through Twitter and stuff until it's released. So when we brought it to these game shows and get to see people play, it was just a whole new level of stuff. And then you get to see people that were invested in us making it and stuff. And it's like, when we first started these streams, I was like, who's gonna watch a middle-aged dude do all this stuff? So seeing people actually interested in how it's made, and stay engaged and spread the word, and it's just been such a rewarding experience that made us want to chase this. And here we are, still chasing it on our 5th year, and hopefully there's many more years after this. Blood 2, and I don't know if we'll have any. Bob and I will be maybe in the grave after Blood 2. We're just too old. All right. So yeah, we got all the information there. And yeah, if you have any questions about animation and stuff like that, please hit us up. We try to, be engaged on our social media and our emails and all that stuff. So please spread the word. All right, let me get this colored. And if you just have questions about animation, it doesn't even have to be about this game. We'll try to answer it as best we can. Alright. Alright, so that's cleaned up. I think I got one more cleanup before we can say goodbye till next week. Let me do... Let's see, we'll do this one. This one I might put... Let me get the dirt shape at least right on this one. So, let's see, here we go. We want the dirt pretty big still. I just rough out the dirt here, too. Almost got the ending skin. There we go. Okay, so it's pretty much back there. So he presses down. I'm going to go lower on this one right here. But we're going to kind of start shaping the sides to the right size of the dirt and try to get some of the texture and all that good stuff here. Okay, so if that's the shape of the underlay here, then when he goes down into the dirt here, we want it to kind of press out. If you push down something, it should expand a little bit on the sides. So we're going to go out here, and he's going down in there too, so the back of it should bend just slightly. We'll do that here. And then, with that in mind, I can kind of figure out what the legs are doing here. Wish listed. Yes, thank you. Guys, honestly, it really is flattering to see that. It's we had the trailer come out and we got a really good response on YouTube with it, and you work on something this long and you worry you're too close to it. You're worried if people are going to be as passionate about the thing you're working on as much. So seeing this kind of stuff and people actually responding to it and saying, "Whoa, this looks like a cartoon," and all, it really means a lot to the team. We're so thankful that you guys have, as the guys who've been here for 3 years watching me do this. I mean, that's a huge compliment, and we love you guys for that. All right, so this is a funny frame to end on, but we'll do it. I hope that's not the thumbnail. They're like, what is this guy doing? So yes, thank you. And we're going to be here, we're going to try to do this once a week. We talked to a other animation buddy of ours who might stop in the studio one weekend. We'll make that more of sort of I'm cleaning this up at 200. Hold on. I'm trying to rush things. Another animation buddy of ours, he's a Long Island native as well. He might stop in and we'll hop on Twitch and we can talk about his career and all that stuff. He's not associated with the game, but he's a really good guy. Has just as much experience as us, and his story is very fascinating too. So we'll get him on, and we can show some of his work. We did that last time, and Twitch took us down. But we'll see. We'll be a little more cognizant of what we post. Maybe some more of his personal work. And that might not even be a Friday. We'll see when I can get him here. And yeah, we'll we can get Bob on the stream too, and he can show you some of the background techniques too. So it's not just animation and in-betweens and me droning on. Alright, I'll just do that here. Alright. Got that. We'll clean that up. Oh, one more cleanup dirt drawing. Then it'll be exactly 2 or 4. I can feel good about myself. I'm going to continue on this too, and I'll try to post something on Twitter when I finish it. I don't know if it'll be later today or early next week. But I think this is going to be the character for a little bit. We're going to get to all that and this will be just sort of the Twitch and YouTube stream character. We can call him that in the game. We'll call him Twitch. Okay. Let me get the dirt. Oh, no closing lines. And then this. Get the... I love these quicker frames now because now everything's so easy. I'm just going to be animating a dirt pile, which goes a lot quicker. We'll get all the timing in here so it doesn't look so stagnant. And we'll see this. I might change some of this timing too. So, all right. That's as good a place to end as any. Well, we appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be around next week. Please enjoy the weekend. See you guys soon. Bye.